Hi everybody, so a few weeks back I organised another live brew day via the BrewTube Facebook group, which we did on Zoom. This was off the back of the Altogether IPA brew day that we did, which went really well. And yeah, there was a few people who wanted to do some more of that sort of thing, which is what we did. So we based it around choosing a recipe out of the Camera Homebrewing Essentials, Camera's Essential Homebrewing book, and the recipe that we picked was the Hokum Stomp Oatmeal Porter, which is a recipe that gets a lot of good feedback already. So we were all quite happy that that one came up in the random draw that we did for it. So the beer's in the keg, it's nicely conditioned. I've also got the real thing as well, so I can do a little side by side, and that's what I'm doing in this video. So I'll go through the recipe quickly. There's a little bit of footage from the brew day. I didn't get that much because I was talking bollocks to people on Zoom for the whole day, but a little bit of brew day footage, and then obviously the tasting and stuff at the end. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, recipe first. So obviously if you want to see the original recipe, then get yourself this book. You can also buy the recipe kit from the Malt Miller as well. So a lot of people on the brew day actually bought their recipe kit from them. It's quite a complex malt bill on this one. I did tweak it slightly for my version because I was missing, what was I missing? I wasn't missing that much, but I didn't have a couple of the things that were on the original malt bill, so I did have to substitute on a couple of things. So I'll go through my version of the recipe rather than giving you the exact one in the book. And yeah, we'll just talk through that quickly. So it's an oatmeal porter, and the target gravity for this one is 1061 with a final gravity of about 1018, which in theory should give you about 5.6% on the final ABV. The malt bill is pretty complex, as I said before. In my version, I've got 3.6 kilos of Warminster Pale Ale malt as the base, 400 grams of amber malt, 400 grams of malted oats. You could use just normal rolled oats or whatever sort of oats that you've got available to you for that, but I had some malted oats, so I put those in. I had 280 grams of extra dark crystal, which was about 240 EBC, I think. Then 220 grams of normal chocolate malt and another 220 grams of pale chocolate malt. The original recipe does have some carafa free in it. I didn't have any of that, so I just increased slightly the amount of both the types of chocolate malt that were in there. And then finally the 110 grams of carapils or dextrin malt. So yeah, like I said, quite a bit going on there in the grain bill, but yeah, hopefully that all adds to the complexity of the flavour and whatnot. And then hopping wise, very simple. We've just got some Magnum in there for bittering. So I ended up using about 12 grams of Magnum and 50 grams of Bramling Cross at the end in the whirlpool. So steeping that, I did it at 80 degrees for about 20-minute hop stand. The bitterness that comes out of that for my recipe calculated out as about 29. In the original recipe it is given as 20, but with the hop stand on there added on to the bittering hops, it came out a little bit higher for me. But I just left the quantities roughly where they were. I think the amount of Magnum in the original recipe was slightly less than what I put in, but I was adjusting because of the difference in alpha acids. So the alpha on my Magnum was a little bit lower than the one given in the recipe, I think. So yeah, I changed it up to make up for that, but then the IBUs were a little bit higher, but that shouldn't matter too much, hopefully. So yeah, that's the recipe. As I said, we should get a really, you know, like full kind of malty flavor from that. It's quite a high mash as well, which helps to contribute to that high finishing gravity, and will hopefully give it even more sort of thickness and mouthfeel, as well as the oats which are in there, which should contribute to that. So I would be expecting, just looking at that malt bill, to have a really sort of complex malt flavor, and also quite a smooth and sort of silky finish as well, and mouthfeel from the oats and everything else, and the fuller body from that higher mash temperature. Hopping wise, the Bramling Cross is quite a is quite a potent hop in terms of flavour for an English hop, and it does bring you some kind of berry and hedgerow kind of fruit flavours. So potentially that could bring something into play as well from the hop flavour as well, especially as it's a hop stand as well. So 50 grams as a hop stand for a porter is quite a big late addition for that style of beer. So you might expect to see some sort of contribution flavour wise from that as well. Certainly maybe some fruity notes or berry type flavours. So yeah, that's the recipe. Like I said, that's my version of it. It's slightly tweaked compared to the one in the book, but you can obviously get the book yourself or order that recipe kit if you wanted to do that. I think it's probably published online as well in a few places where people have copied it into the software and so on. So yeah, if you want to have a go at it, that's where you can find the information. I will put my recipe in the description as well if you want to have a look at it there. I am also using Brewfather now, so if you want to find my version of it on there, I'll put a link to that in the description too. Okay, so there's a little bit of brew footage, not very much, but we might as well watch it anyway, so let's go to the brew footage. So there we have the finished article. Yeah, apologies for the bubbles on the side of the glass. I'm sure I'll get some comments about my dirty glassware on that one. But yeah, this is the finished version. The brew day went pretty well. Had a lot of fun as well. Loads of people got involved. So that was brilliant. Thank you to everyone who did that. And just as a quick plug, we are doing this as a regular thing. So if you want to get involved, get on the BrewTube Facebook group and go into the events section. The next one that we're doing is on the 18th of July, and that one is going to be the Midlands Mild out of the recipe book. But again, if people want to come on and brew something else or just join in for a bit of chat and banter and drinking and whatever, feel free to do that as well. So yeah, Saturday 18th of July is the next one, and hopefully we'll get a few people doing it then as well, because the one when we brewed this was really good. So as I said, brew day went well. Most of the numbers were pretty much bang on for me. I think the gravity was slightly lower, the original gravity, so I missed that by a couple of points, but it did finish, I think, about the right number, maybe 1017 or 1018, but it came out about 5.5%. So all in all, it pretty much ended up where it was supposed to be according to the recipe. I did think maybe it would ferment down a little bit lower, but I think with the amount of speciality malts in that grist plus the high mash temperature, it did pretty much, you know, keep that final gravity quite high. So yeah, this is my version. Let's get the real deal into a glass as well, so we can do some comparison. So Daya are well, probably one of the best craft breweries in the UK at the moment. They do get a hell of a lot of positive feedback from people, and from the beers of theirs that I've tried, you know, it's a well-earned reputation. That was an abysmal pour, so I'm gonna have to wait for that to settle down a bit now. But some of their beers are absolutely fantastic. They're well known for the you know, big hazy IPAs and New England IPAs and that sort of thing, but some of their other stuff is really good as well. So well, I'm hoping the Hokum Stomp is really good, but they've been doing quite a few lagers recently and other styles as well. I had a really nice raspberry Berliner Weiss from them the other day, and sours aren't really normally my thing, but I really enjoyed that. And their American Pale Ale, they're sort of one of their kind of, I don't know if it's a core beer, but it's one of their recipes that they do repeat a lot. Steady Rolling Man is a fantastic beer. I think it's actually one of the best sort of regular American Pale Ales that are produced at the moment. So that's the original. Now my one has been in the glass a little bit longer, so the head has disappeared a little bit, but I would say certainly appearance wise they're looking pretty good. There's maybe a little bit more colour, a little bit more of a tan colour on the head of the this one, but that might just be because there's more of it at the moment. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to try my one first and just sort of do a little bit of a review on that before I then compare it to the original, just in case it's rubbish compared to their one. So on the nose, yeah, there's a hell of a lot of malt complexity just on the aroma with this, which is not really surprising given what's gone into it, but there is definitely a kind of sweet chocolatey aroma, which is the main thing that I get, but there's some coffee notes in there as well, a little bit of a sort of roasty note, but mainly that kind of sweet chocolatey aroma. I don't know if I'm getting anything hop wise off of it, but yeah, certainly there's plenty of malt action going on in the aroma there. So appearance wise in the glass, it is black, but there's just a hint of a little bit of very dark brown or slightly red color at the very bottom of the glass, but otherwise it's pretty much solid black color. And yeah, the head isn't massive on there, but it's still sticking around, and it does look like you're going to get a little bit of lacing off of there, so it does look good in the glass. It's enough sniffing and looking at it. Let's give it a taste. So the first thing that jumps out at me on this one is actually the kind of mouthfeel on it. So it does have a really silky smooth kind of velvety mouthfeel to it, so it's really, yeah, really nice, kind of pleasant sensation when you're drinking it. And then you just get a whole load of different kind of malt flavors coming at you. There's some chocolate there, there's a little bit of sort of dark bitter chocolate flavor to it. There is that kind of coffee note on there as well. There is a bit of roastiness there too, so it's not all kind of sweet flavors. There's a little bit of bitterness and roastiness in there too. There is a nice balance between the bitter and the sweet on this, so it's not, you know, although it's got very high final gravity, doesn't taste particularly sort of sweet as such. It's more the actual kind of body and mouthfeel that's affecting, I think, rather than the actual sweetness to it. Now, I didn't get any real sort of impression of the hops on the aroma. It's difficult to say if I'm getting much of that flavour wise either. There's maybe just a hint of a sort of berry note in there somewhere, but it's not massive, and I may, you know, be thinking that that's there because I know what the hop is that's been used in this one and the amount of it that's gone in. But to be honest, it's difficult to pick it out as an individual flavour, bearing in mind how much actually went into the recipe as a late addition. So I would maybe have expected a little bit more contribution from the hops in terms of a distinct flavour, bearing in mind how big that flame out addition was. That said, you know, maybe although I can't pick it out as an individual flavour, if it's kind of tying together all those malt flavours as well and just bring that little bit of bitterness at the end, it's still doing a good job of that. So it's pretty good. I'm really, pretty happy with that, to be honest. As far as porters go, I think the amount of hype that this recipe gets is probably warranted. I'd certainly say it's one of the better porters that I've brewed myself, and I would definitely revisit this recipe for sure, before I've even compared it to the original. So let's get in the original beer. So Daya's Hokum Stomp Oatmeal Porter. This one is 5.6% as per the recipe that I followed. So this is slightly, very slightly stronger than the one I've got, assuming that my measurements are all actually accurate. There's probably a margin for error, which means it could be either way. Just quickly on the description, this is a chewy oatmeal porter with a plethora of biscuit, crystal and roasted grains, luscious milk chocolate flavour and texture with a dark fruit and coffee hit. Deliciousness in simplicity. Interestingly, they mentioned biscuit there on the description, although there's not any biscuit malts specifically in the recipe out of the book. That said though, amber malt, aromatic malt, those are kind of in the same vicinity, certainly colour wise, as biscuit malt, and there will be some kind of biscuity flavours that come from those as well. So I don't know whether there's actual biscuit malt in it, or they're just sort of referring to those malts as biscuity malts, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, let's check it out. So yeah, the head's died back a little bit on this one as well, very similar to my one. Otherwise, it does look pretty much exactly the same. Again, almost completely jet black, apart from just a very small amount of red colour at the very bottom of the glass. Aroma wise, it smells nice and malty again. I'm not sure there's quite as much on the nose from the malts in this, but it does have that sort of general kind of roasty, dark malt aroma to it. Maybe a very slight hint of fruitiness off of this as well. Okay, but let's do the taste test. So again, very smooth mouthfeel. This is particularly easy drinking. I think maybe slightly easier drinking than my version, but possibly part of the reason for that is maybe there's not quite as much complexity to the flavour on this. I think I do get a bit of berry from the hops on this, very slightly, but again, it's not a massive hit of flavour there. It's quite subtle. It does have those kind of chocolate, coffee notes. There is a little bit of sweetness there, but it's a bit more kind of subdued. It's a little bit more down here, whereas the sort of flavour on that one is a bit more punchy, certainly from the malts anyway. There's definitely more aroma coming off of this one, I think, my version. Okay, so it's pretty close. There's not a massive disparity between them, but I've got to say, I think there is a little bit more, just slightly, a bit more depth of flavour on the homebrew version compared to this one, although, you know, they're not a long way apart at all. As far as clone recipes go, actually, this is one that's actually come out, you know, pretty close to what the original is, and I did tweak the recipe slightly, so it's not exactly the same anyway. But even so, yeah, that's a, you know, as far as homebrew clone recipes, that's a pretty good stab at reproducing this. And in some ways, I maybe slightly prefer the homebrew version, so can't be unhappy with that, especially as I'm still really enjoying the Daya one, which is very nice. So yeah, happy with both of those, but especially happy that I've brewed my version of it and it's come out really well. So that recipe I would definitely recommend to you, particularly if you enjoy, you know, porters and stouts or darker beers generally. Yeah, a good one to brew. So cheers, everyone.
I'm the dude, so that's what you call me, you know? That or his dudeness or duder or, you know, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.